Hello everyone, Shinto Bean here with another Warhammer Combat Cards update. This time we're looking at the latest balance pass in mid-April 2023. It sounds like they're doing a big balance pass every 2 seasons. So last season there were no changes at all to the meta, but with this one there are a number of changes, a few big nerfs, and a lot of bodyguard buffs, some of them pretty significant. So once again, I'm going to go through and look at the cards in-game alongside the changes in the developer blog. So first of all, let's look at the Warlord changes. So first up, we got the Leagues of Votann Warlord. This is the Psyker version with the Null Vortex, which silences the card opposite. And I believe when they first released this guy, I think it only silenced the trait. And maybe, I'm not sure if it was supposed to silence the special rule, but apparently now it gets rid of both trait and special rule for 3 turns instead of 2. So pretty significant increase. I haven't actually used this guy since his release. It was pretty bugged and extremely laggy playing with him, which just made it an awful experience. Apparently they've gotten rid of those bugs, hopefully. But even so, I doubt I'll be using him much. Next up is Captain Badrukk. Now this guy, of course, is pretty brutal. When you're playing against him, his ability to just wipe out everything with a chain of ranged attacks. And so they've given him a pretty big nerf. They've actually increased the points cost on the Warlord by a pretty good amount. He's up to 36 points now, and now his special rule does 50 damage instead of 60. And a few bodyguards that typically you see with Badrukk also got nerfed as well, so pretty significant change for him. Lieutenant Tolmeron also got nerfed again. This guy, his special rule, they've changed it so many times. Like they buffed him, buffed him again, and now they've nerfed him again. So his the buff he gets from the ranged attacks is down to 20%. So 5% decrease. That's still quite powerful. I think that the stats on him got slightly nerfed as well. I think his melee is a little bit less than it was before. So let's go through the stat changes now. Starting with the Tau faction, a few of the melee bodyguards actually got buffed this time around. And a lot of these cards are ones that just have not been popular at all, just kind of useless cards that they're trying to make more relevant. So we've got this Ethereal here, he got a plus 12 melee, so quite a bit stronger now. This is a really strange change, the Crew Tracker. He used to have Outflank, now he has melee debuff and Scout combo, which I've never actually seen before. Like, Scout units typically just increase an attack type, but in this guy, apparently, when he deploys, he's just going to debuff the enemy melee, which is pretty situational. I feel like Outflank is just better. He's also 2 points less. So, yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Then we've got the Kroot Hound, which got a plus 8 melee, which is pretty good for a 4-point card, and it also got one of its health upgrades changed to melee, so it hits quite a bit harder now. And finally, Aunshi, the legendary melee Tau bodyguard, got a bit of a buff to his melee stats as well, and as well as 23 more health. So he's quite a bit stronger. I'm still not really sure who's going to be running melee Tau, but there you go. Servants of the Emperor only got one little change, and it is a nerf to Inquisitor Koteaz, who is one of the strongest psychers, especially when combined with Greyfax. So he deals a little bit less psychic damage and got a slight decrease to his health. For the Space Marines, we've got some interesting changes. First of all, the Storm Talon gunship has 28 less health this time. But we have a lot of significant buffs to the Death Watch Space Marines in particular, and some of them are pretty insane. Like this guy, he went up 8 points, so he's quite a bit more expensive now, but he got 25 more melee and 30 more health, and some of his upgrades also got changed as well. So he hits really hard now, 70 melee here. I mean, I have him at level 12, but plus the Scout, so he's definitely a hard hitter. We've got the Imperial Fist Centurion. This guy used to have shield, but they changed his trait to Furious Charge and just gave him more health and melee. So he's definitely a lot tankier. He was just a terrible card before. I mean, the only reason you'd want to run him was for the shields, and Space Marines have plenty of shields already. Still not sure if I'll actually be using him much, because it's kind of weird. He only has like 2 melee upgrades until like level 12. So he still doesn't deal a whole lot of damage, especially when you see some of the other changes here. We got the Salamander's Ironclad Dreadnought, so this one also got some of its stats redistributed, so it's more of a melee unit now. Used to have more ranged. Watch Captain Artemis himself got a pretty big boost to his ranged attack and a slight increase to the melee, so he hits quite hard, like over 50 damage in both ranged and melee for only 23 points. That's quite good. And then some more Death Watch bodyguards here. This guy, this is a pretty massive change. He used to have target acquired, now he has Death Blow and got a huge boost to his melee. He has slightly less health, but because he has Death Blow, you actually want him dying. And so, yeah, 73 melee for 11 points. That's pretty crazy. This guy's not quite as insane. He got, but still plus 13 melee, so he's a pretty hard hitter as well now. Lieutenant Tolmeron, we mentioned this before, but yeah, minus 6 melee and minus 18 health. We got this Primaris Battle Leader Lieutenant who got all kinds of things changed in his upgrade path, and he has slightly less health, less ranged, but a little bit more melee and slightly less points. It's a whole lot of changes, but I feel like I'm still not going to use him at all. And we got this Deathwing Terminator. He just got a flat 30 more health, so he's a lot more tanky. It's a newer card, so I still have him at a pretty low level. The Deathwatch Corvus Blackstar got a plus 16 ranged to its barrage attack, so that's a pretty big buff to this one. And then finally, the Deathwatch Sternguard Veteran got plus 22 ranged, plus 13 health, and minus 5 melee attacks. So this thing all of a sudden has a really powerful ranged weapon, and it's got poison. It's the only Space Marine card with poison, I believe. But yeah, for 16 points, that's quite good. Moving on to Chaos, we just got a few minor changes here. Horticulus Slimix gets plus 30 health. And then this Cultist right here got plus 15 melee. He is a Berserker. This is a card I don't actually own. But yeah, one of the newer Cultist cards. For the Tyranids, the Tyrant Guard got a slight nerf. It's plus 3 points. This thing did get a massive increase to its stats in a previous balance pass. So just a slight nerf there. And for whatever reason, a slight nerf on the Black Lance, increasing his points by 2. For the Necrons, the Command Barge got plus 65 health, which is pretty insane. Like I feel like I've never seen a buff like this massive on a card. Like no points increase, just 65 more health, which tells me that the thing had way too little health to begin with. And then the Tombstalker's minus 13 points, so a lot cheaper, and so that makes this thing a little more viable. One of the issues with some of these expensive, like common and rare cards, is that they just are not nearly as good as like epics or legendaries if you have them at a higher level, just because they only have one trait, so they are really kind of falling behind in performance. For the Orcs, we've got the big Mecha Dread here, which is another card I never really used much, but this thing is 6 points cheaper, and it got plus 11 melee attack, so pretty decent increase there. We got a fun change to Ghazghkull Thraka, which was surprising. So his secondary trait was changed from Inspiring Presence to Fear, which is a little bit more fitting, but it's actually a pretty massive change. It makes him a lot more tanky, a lot harder to kill once he's on the field, and he should have a pretty big attack once he deploys, so I think it'll be fun to try him out this season, see how he performs. Like I mentioned before, Captain Badrukk plus 7 points now, so he's at 36. And the Dakajet got a pretty big nerf as well, plus 4 points and minus 38 health, so the thing is very much a glass cannon now. It's pretty ridiculous how low its health is now compared to other cards of similar cost. Like if you compare this, look at the stats on this thing, compared to the Blastajet, which has 223 health, at the same level 253 health for fewer points. But yeah, the Dakajet was pretty overpowered just in combination with Captain Badrukk with that massive precision shot. You just clear an entire board before your turn even starts, which you can still do, but yeah, pretty big nerf to Badrukk and his buddies. And then for the Eldar, the Wraithlord gets plus 13 melee, and a few of its upgrades changed, so it hits a lot harder with melee. I'm pretty sure it only had like 50 melee before this update, now it's 87, so this thing is way stronger now. Then the Warwalker, this thing has gone through a lot of changes too. It's a very old card. came out like when the game was first released, and so this thing for some reason got nerfed. It's 2 more points now, minus 10 ranged attack. I really don't understand why this thing got nerfed when there's another card that does pretty much the same thing, except it's just so much better, which is the Shroud Runner. If you look at that, the thing has way more health, and it's quite a bit stronger. I mean, it is more expensive, but it's pretty much better in every way. So yeah, I don't really understand that change there. The Shining Spear got a pretty big boost to its melee, not because of a direct stat increase, but just because its upgrade path was changed. It has Scout instead of Big Game Hunter, so in a melee deck this thing is quite a bit better now. And finally, for the Leagues of Votann, this Berserk got plus 5 melee and plus 13 health. The Thunderkin, which is another card that I do not own, this thing got plus 33 to its health. And finally, the Hearthguard got plus 10 melee, and one of its ranged upgrades changed to health. So that is it for this balance pass. It's not the most exciting balance pass ever. I mean, the nerfs, I think, are more significant than anything, but there are a few key changes to bodyguards that will, I think, change up the way that people make some of their decks. Like melee Eldari could be quite a bit different this season, I think. And those Deathwatch Space Marines look pretty crazy now, so definitely want to use those in melee decks. I also do want to try out Ghazghkull Thraka just for fun. But let me know what you think of these changes, and if there's anything else that you think that should have been changed that wasn't, let us know in the comments. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.